From the MIT studios of the Teaching Systems Lab, this is Teach Lab, a podcast about the art and craft of teaching. I'm Justin Reich.
And I am Jesse Dukes.
We're about halfway through The Homework Machine, our special series on AI and K-12. Thanks to all of you who've listened and shared.
And thanks to all of the students and teachers who have spoken to us for our research, many of whom have been featured on the podcast, or will be soon.
We have a new resource that we're excited to share. We're calling it a guide for AI in schools, perspectives for the perplexed. And it's a little bit different from, I think, just about every other resource out there because basically everything in it is sourced from the teachers and students that we've been talking with over the last couple of years. So it's got ideas about how to teach AI, whether to teach AI, ethical dimensions of teaching AI, what teachers should learn, what students should learn. But rather than saying, okay, here are the answers, we're saying here are a whole bunch of hypotheses and experiments that we've collected from practicing educators, and we want to share them with you.
For that project, we had a wonderful advisory panel, including a bunch of the people we met doing this reporting and research. One of them was Nanki Kaur, the student you heard in the first episode. And there were other people on that panel who you'll hear in upcoming episodes. And we had wonderful authorship from Julie Smith, who works for the Institute for Advanced Computing Education. And we had project management from Josh Sheldon, who is one of Justin's colleagues at MIT.
It's a great resource. I'm looking forward to sharing it with a lot of people. I hope everybody will enjoy reading it.
To get it, you can go to our show notes of this podcast episode. We'll send you a link. Or if you're very good at remembering links, you could go to tsl.mit.edu/AI-guidebook. Again, go to the show notes of Teach Lab Presents the Homework Machine for a link to the guidebook. All right, after the break, we'll hear from Justin on his plans to adapt to AI in his own teaching. That's coming up.
Much of what we once imagined about the future is here.
Pocket-sized radio instruments will enable individuals to communicate with anyone, anywhere.
But this reshaped reality is also filled with thorny questions that aren't so easy to navigate. Welcome to Shift, a new weekly podcast from PRX.
I present to you Electro, the Moto Man.
Ladies and gentlemen.
I would say that one of my greatest skills is my ability to interact with humans.
I'm your host, Jennifer Strong. You can learn more at shiftshow.ai.
So, Justin, we've been talking with teachers for this podcast. You are a teacher of sorts.
A practicing educator. I've been on sabbatical this past year, and I have my first class of the semester coming up on Wednesday.
So your students have the homework machine, just like all the other students that we've been talking to. Have you been thinking about how you are adapting to this moment of AI in schools?
Yes, extensively. I've been agonizing this week. I'm glad that we've spent all of this time on the homework machine because it's given me a lot to think about. In my learning media and technology class, I have an assignment that I've worked on for a long time that you cannot do a Google search and get the answer to this assignment. And the assignment is to take an education technology and to think about whether it's more aligned with one of two educational approaches. So generally speaking, there are two educational theories which people are constantly debating over. So constructionism, constructivism, these are ideas that students learn best by actively building their own understanding through projects or through apprenticeships. And so teachers end up being more like coaches or guides. And then instructionism is the idea that learning happens when a teacher directly gives information to students in some highly structured, teacher-focused way. So Khan Academy, which is a bunch of videos in which someone is lecturing, is more instructionist, and Scratch, which is this collaborative programming learning environment where there's not a lot of direct instruction and rules and you kind of play around and do whatever you want, is a more constructionist apprenticeship kind of approach. And then when you explain why your analysis is correct, you then have to reimagine this tool as built by the other folks. So if you explain why Khan Academy is instructionist, you then have to say, all right, what would a Khan Academy be if it was built by the kinds of people who made Scratch? You can't Google the answer to this essay, but actually if you put that prompt into GPT for a lot of things, it comes up with reasonably good ideas. Yeah. So what I decided to do is say, okay, well, let's just lean into that. Instead of having you just write one essay about one education technology, you have to go to GPT and you have to do this exercise with somewhere between 6 and 10 education technologies. Just tell GPT to do it. Tell GPT to give you the output. And then instead of generating one answer to this question, you're going to reflect on and you're going to recognize 6 to 10 answers to this question. And you're going to figure out like what patterns evolve, what do you learn by looking across these things, how does comparing these examples help you solidify your understanding of instructionism and constructionism. And then you have to pick one of those and polish that into an essay.
What are you hoping your students will learn from this?
The most important thing they get out of it is I actually need them to understand instructionism and constructionism. And by taking those concepts and applying it to a domain, that helps solidify it in their understanding. Also, by taking a tool and flipping it into another domain, it helps them generate some more ideas about what those structures are. And yeah, I mean, it's a good assignment. You have to map some concepts that you've been doing a bunch of reading and learning about in a couple of different ways. I think there's good reason to believe that you can do that learning through recognition rather than through generation. I mean, this is just like a sort of common things that comes up in education research. Do you need to figure things out by solving a problem or by watching 10 people solve a problem? And there's good reason to believe that watching people solve problems or watching the output of solved problems can be a little bit more efficient, can show you more cases, can help you from getting stuck in kind of local minima of misunderstanding. But generation is often considered the sort of gold standard of problem solving. I will say it's not really my job in this class to teach kids how to write, though I do often teach them how to write. And I will, if they have a bunch of GPT output, I think they will probably learn less about writing. And I may find they learn less about the domain. I also may find that it's super boring to read, 20 essays that were GPT generated. But I've never really done that before, so we'll see how it goes.
Well, I have a comment and I have a question.
Yes.
And so my comment is, I think it's really neat that you bring this up because we have an upcoming episode of The Homework Machine in which a student tells a story of, with her teacher's permission, kind of shifting an assignment from a generative-oriented assignment to a kind of curatorial or selective or editing, recognition-oriented assignment. And, I was kind of thinking out loud when she told me that story, and I was saying, I kind of consider myself, I'm sort of a professional writer, even though often what I'm writing is podcast scripts or radio scripts.
I write stuff people say.
I write stuff that people say. I am certainly a professional communicator, and often I find that working collaboratively with other people's inputs, but still shaping it into something that I find coherent and I think will serve a general audience is often more challenging than when I just generate it on my own, too. And so I had this moment in our interview where I was like, actually what you're doing might even be harder than generating it itself. It's certainly a different set of skills. So that's just an observation. We'll hear about that in an upcoming episode, and we can maybe get back into the topic then. My question, too, is, the most important learning that you want for your students is understanding instructionism versus constructionism. Are you also hoping they're going to learn something about AI in this process?
No, I don't think. I mean, yeah, a little bit, but it's not really. And we'll talk about it. It'll be like a little. I'm probably actually more hoping that I learn something about AI. Or about the kinds of learning experiences that they have with AI. I mean, I'm sure we'll reflect on it and it'll be grist for kind of future efforts. I mean, it's a great question because a lot of what we have to do as instructors as we're revising all of our assignments is, all of our assignments, especially complex sort of assignments like this, are sort of a bundle of learning objectives. Like, these are the things I really have to do. These are some other things you might learn when you're doing it. These are the things I don't need you to do. And really if the students don't leave the first 3 or 4 weeks of class kind of really understanding some big ideas about how people learn, the rest of the semester is not as enjoyable for me because they come up with spurious ideas about what technologies can and can't do. And if they do learn this stuff well, it's a lot more fun for me and for them because they can come up with clever, correct grounded, research-informed understandings of what technologies can do in context. And you could take you could take years of classes on these two topics. I'm just giving you like enough to get started and one assignment to make you understand that technologies either are intentionally designed with learning theories, or even if they're unintentionally designed, there's still learning theories that are expressed through them, and people don't agree about how good different learning theories are and the differences between them and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. I guess also I have the sense that like, okay, students, you might be throwing some GPTs and LLMs at me. I'm just going to throw them right back at you. Like,
it is a little bit of that, but to a lesser degree, right? It's not like, oh, I'm going to use ChatGPT to grade you. I'm going to say, oh, you're basically saying, oh, you want to use ChatGPT? Fine. I want to see if you can use it to actually do something better.
You might write one essay for me with ChatGPT. I'm going to make you write 10 essays for me with ChatGPT.
True. We're sort of escalating. Right. This is the like, oh, you want to eat Jell-O for breakfast? Well, how about 10 gallons of Jell-O?
Or maybe it's like Matilda's
right.
Bruce Bogtrotter in Matilda, who's
right.
required by Miss Trunchbull, eats a piece of Miss Trunchbull's cake and is forced to eat the entire cake. So I'm going to be Bogtrottering them with AI.
Do you think that you will see better overall essays, answers in response to this question than in the era before the homework machine, before the students had access to AI, when they would have had to do their own research, generate their own ideas? Or do you think that getting this kind of generative help from generative AI will augment your students' performance, and that you might even get better essays than you've ever gotten before? Which do you think is more likely?
I think it's more likely that I will get less good essays that I find less enjoyable to read because they're homogenized by the machine. One possibility, too, is that actually sometimes these technologies tend to be a little bit more helpful for people who are at the lower end of the competency scale and more harmful people at the upper end of the competency scale. That students who are really good at understanding this stuff, really good writers, really clever, have come up with some really neat versions of these assignments. And what GPT might come up with might be less good than what they can do on their own. On the other hand, I've had some students who are not really getting what's going on. And it's possible that the output for those students will be better, but I won't actually detect that they won't get what's going on. Like sometimes students turn in essays that show misunderstandings of these concepts, and GPT is going to give or scaffold them a sort of correct understanding of these concepts, but they won't actually understand it.
You might get a better answer, but a worse tool for evaluating your students' knowledge.
And a worse tool for developing their knowledge. Yeah, it's funny. I'm sort of negative. I guess I'm going into it somewhat pessimistically, but I also kind of feel like, well, I might as well try.
If your students said to you, I want to do it the old way, and I solemnly swear on my honor as an MIT student that I will not use ChatGPT, do you believe them in that instance?
Yeah, I think so. The stakes are a little bit lower for me, because if they really want to spend $1 gazillion to come here and not do the learning in my class, all right.
As my uncle, who was an instructor, history instructor for a college in Virginia, used to say, we already have your money.
I asked my students last time I was teaching what set of rules we should use for AI in class. And they said something along the lines of, oh, Mr. Reich, your class is known to be much harder than other students' class. And so I just don't think anyone who would sign up for it would use GPT. If we wanted to, if we wanted to gut, we'd go to someone else's class.
We're here because we want the rigor.
We want the rigor of the Reich experience. And I was, oh, of course, students, I trust you implicitly then.
Go on. No, continue.
Please, absolutely, yes, very challenging, very difficult. But I do want to briefly tell you about my other class, which is Introduction Meeting Studies, which is part of MIT's writing program. It was 20 or 30 years ago, a bunch of alums came back to MIT and said, hey, we like hiring your students, but the problem is they cannot communicate, and it's really a problem, and you need to fix it. And so MIT developed this writing across the curriculum program, and so this class I'm teaching is part of that. For many, many years, me and other instructors of this class have done an assignment, which is do not use your technology for a day. You have to go without media. We call it a media fast assignment. I don't know, if you're our age, it's like not use media for a day. You mean like, I don't know, a Saturday or something? But these kids actually have to like plan days in advance to go without their phones for a day.
I couldn't do a work day. I mean, I do email, Zoom. I mean, are you counting things like Google Calendar and email that you have to log onto your computer, or do you just sort of mean the phone?
So as much as possible, everything, although the way the assignment is written, it's a bit of a challenge by choice. But some of them will definitely like write down their day schedule on the planner. If they want to socialize with people, they'll communicate in advance, things that would be pretty normal for us. Like, hey, you want to meet at the dining hall at 6? But that's just not the way that young people sort of interact now. And I would say most of them have a good experience, and they say, I use my phone too much and it makes me sad. A handful of them have extremely positive experiences where they say, like, I went down to the Charles River and did watercolors for a few hours, and I'm absolutely determined to keep doing this because that made me really happy. And every once in a while, there's actually some students who are like, that day was terrible. I love my friends and family. I don't want to be removed from them for a day.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping a little bit, I'm hoping that they'll see that so much of this is about understanding their relationship with media by depriving themselves of it for a little while, and that taking notes about the day by hand, turning those notes, with a machine as close as possible to a typewriter as I can get them to use, it will be intellectually rewarding for them.
And what is the output of that? What do they turn into you?
Oh, and then they write a 4-page essay about it. They write a draft. They have to meet with a writing advisor. They peer edit it. But there's not going to be a lot of policing or detection or things like that. But I really want to try to explain to them, we can help you get better. But if you let the machine do the work, we can't help you get better. A big thing that I work with them on is revising their arguments. I was just thinking the other day how one of the most common things that I do is in their introduction, in an early draft, they usually have a pretty bad thesis, sort of ill-formed, not that interesting. And then you read throughout the whole essay, and somewhere in the end, you're like, oh, no, you see this thing you wrote like towards the end of the last page? That's actually the best idea.
Yeah.
I don't think GPTs will do that.
Yeah.
I think GPTs will have an argument that just sort of carries forward and is repeated at the end. I don't think you'll see that sense of growth. And it's that growth that I can like point to and nurture, and also is the evidence that they're actually learning. So I'm hoping that I can say more than just don't use GPT, it's bad. I'm hoping I can say, like, these are the kinds of things that I know your brain will do and I can help you with. And it's going to short circuit it if you have the machine use your brain. And then later on, the last thing we do in that class is sort of like a free project to kind of explore media however they want. It's usually my opportunity to learn like what weird thing, I mean, to me, they're weird, but what weird things young people are interested in. I've learned about mukbang videos and people selecting their favorite member of a K-pop band and all kinds of things about video games and puzzle rooms and other stuff. And I think for that final assignment, it's like gloves are off, man. Like you like do the analysis with GPT. You want to write the thing with GPT, whatever. You do a couple of hard things with me in the first part of the semester, and then if you're enjoying doing things that way, we'll keep doing it. And if you want to make computers spit out output, then let's do it.
I mean, what you're sort of betting on is that the students' desire to improve their writing, which they probably do have,
yes,
is going to be stronger in their individual cases than their sense of, oh my God, I have too much work to do, and I need to take whatever shortcut I can possibly find to manage my workload.
So I'm not that concerned about them cheating during the day and using phones. I think some of them do, but I'm pretty sure that almost all of the groups of students I've had do either adhere to their rules throughout the day or when they cheat in interesting ways, and they like give up towards the end of the day and bring that falling short into their writing and essays, and that's productive. But the thing I am really worried about is that they'll just take their notes and take the prompt and feed it into ChatGPT and have that spit out an essay, which I think would be a very sad way of reflecting on this experience. It would be a much worse learning experience than the previous generations of students who had to sit down and come up with it's actually not just a journal of this experience, but you have to craft an argument. So you're not allowed to just say, here's what happened at breakfast and lunch and dinner and when I went to bed. It's sort of, what is the argument that you want to make about what you've learned about your relationship with media?
Well, and if we want to be really rigorous and we want to be in line with what we've been advising school leaders and teachers out there, we should really bring in some of your students to talk about it too.
We should bring some of the students, and maybe what I'll do is I'll grab a pile of old essays and I'll grab a pile of new essays, and we could read some of them, or maybe I can get some permission and post some of them on the website and guess whether this was pre or post GPT writing.
We can use one of your favorite evaluating student work protocols.
Looking at student work. That would be a fun thing to do. Well, Jesse, we're halfway through the homework machine. What's coming up?
Well, Justin, you've heard some kind of rudimentary versions of some of this reporting, but we have an episode coming very soon about a school that has gone all in on AI-powered ed technology. They are experimenting with and piloting some of the commercially available AI-powered ed tech. They're encouraging their teachers to experiment, their students to experiment, and they're doing some assessments, and they're letting us sit in on that process. So we have a whole episode about that.
What do monarch butterflies need to survive? It sends when you click that button at the bottom.
That was like my big thing, was making the research and other things accessible to some students, because some students have a hard time even writing a complete sentence, but they have thoughts that they can get out.
We also have an episode that's more about individual experimentation. So left to their own devices, teachers will experiment with AI to see if they can save some time or see if they can get better learning outcomes. And we'll hear from some teachers and students who report some initial success from some of the things they've tried.
There's so many things that I've encountered where I'm like, I would love to do that, but it takes so much work. Being able to work with the smartest curriculum designer that's ever existed and have that at my disposal is incredible.
Episode 7, our final episode, I have to say, it's still a little bit hazy in my brain as the senior producer, but I think one of the things we've talked about is that ChatGPT and other generative AI arrived at a challenging moment, a moment that was already challenging for schools and education and teachers. And even though there are teachers who are excited about AI and excited to experiment with AI, for many of them, it has just been one more thing to deal with, particularly this challenge around academic integrity and cheating, but also challenges around privacy or, pressure from the administration to start using AI tools. Just one more thing to think about in a moment where they are at capacity or overwhelmed or burned out. So our episode 7 is going to explore the cost of adapting to a disruptive technology.
Why is it that my friend who was an upper level, manager at Google can go to work and can get fed sushi and filet mignon, and I can't even wash my hands in hot water? I mean, literally, I go to the bathroom and I only have cold water to wash my hands. How many millions of dollars are we spending on creating ChatGPT, and we can't even give my students hot water?
It sounds fabulous, Jesse. I get to see a little bit of it in action as we're developing it, but I always find it revealing in new ways to be able to listen to the final versions along with everybody else.
Thank you. Yeah, well, and you've been a big part of this. And there's one thing that we keep talking about. We have these conversations about it, and it never quite makes its way into an episode. But at some point, I'm hoping to find a chance to have a long conversation with you, maybe with some of our reporting, maybe with some other interlocutors about this question of AI literacy, which is kind of a buzzword right now. I think that term is being used by different people in different ways, and I think it would be useful to unpack that. I know that you have a critique of some of the discourse around AI literacy. Maybe that would be a bonus episode that we would get to after this kind of main run of the Homework Machine 2.
It would be a bonus for me to get to talk to you about that. Hopefully a bonus to our listeners to be able to listen in and chat with us.
Well, hopefully we'll get there. So I'm excited. I'm excited to share these episodes, and I'm excited to hear about your experiments going into the fall. And I hope we do get a chance to hear how your assignments in the age of generative AI went with both classes.
Whether or not my students use the homework machine. Well, Jesse, thanks so much for joining us on Teach Lab.
My pleasure.
Teach Lab is a production of the Teaching Systems Lab at MIT in the Department of Comparative Media Studies /writing. This episode...
Are you reading this from ChatGPT
right now? No. This is me.
This is from memory?
Okay.
Sorry, I interrupted.
This episode was produced by Stephen Jackson and Jesse Dukes. We had editing from Ruxandra Guidi and Alexandra Solomon, reporting and research from Holly McDeed, Natasha Estevez, Andrew Parsons, Marnette Federis, and Chris Bagg. Sound design and music supervision by Stephen Jackson. Production help from Yebu G and Nathan Ray. Data analysis is by Manny Ngozi Nmani and Manasa Kadulu. Special thanks to Josh Sheldon and Eric Klopfer. We get administrative support from Jessica Rondon, marketing and distribution help from Ariel Nissenblatt, Andrew Whitaker, and also Chris Bagg. And one more thing, please take our listener survey. We want to know who is listening to the show and get some ideas for future episodes. Find the link in the show notes or teachlabpodcast.com. You'll be entered to win a $25 gift card. I'm Justin Reich. This is The Homework Machine, a program of the Teaching Systems Lab located at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Cambridge,
Office City,
Massachusetts. All right, Stephen, let's hear that MIT harpsichord.
Play it, bud.